And once again, I want to say greetings to each and every one of you, Aquava, and welcome. Welcome to another round of the Conscious Rasta Report here on LIV Radio, LIV TV, and livinginblack.com. My name is Kidi Owadu, aka the Conscious Rasta. Weekday mornings, you and I get together live. We come at you from 9 a.m. Pacific time. That's 12 noon Eastern time, 5 p.m. GMT, and 8 p.m. East Africa time. We get together with you and we deal with culture, consciousness, historical perspectives, entertainment, economics, education, health, labor, law, politics, religion, family, conflict, future studies, all areas of human interactivity and development. Today's date is Wednesday. It is the 29th of January, 2025 in the Western calendar. This corresponds to the year 6265 in the Kemetic calendar, to which we have realigned our cultural clock. Welcome to the 7th millennium. You have found your family in a peaceful place here on LIV Radio, LIV TV here on livinginblack.com. And it's been a hectic morning. You can tell when I come on the program, it's a little wild. I'm pushing buttons on all these different devices at the same time, getting everything lined up, getting the video lined up, and actually putting up the green screen in the studio, audios, getting the various computers in place, and I think I got everything in place for today. Let's go ahead and let's introduce today's program. We're going to take a little bit of a different pattern today, or a different approach today. You have heard me since November, mainly talking just about science and facts and details, writing 3 what I now regard to be reference books. The first of which, Living Superfood Solutions, using nutrition to prevent and reverse chronic diseases. The second book, Disaster Preparedness for World Wars 5 and 6. Part of that's going to kind of fit in the background of today's conversation. And then just completed. I said I was going to complete this book and have it ready by February 1st. Well, good job, Brother Keaty. You did it. And the book, Stem Cell Revolution, is now complete. And I'm just pushing it all into the places where you can get access to it. What I'll do is, I don't think I got a chance to put it up on the website. So I'm going to put it right here in the chat right now, in case you want to get the book. You can get it in paperback. And I do see you in the family, Queen Mother Kashiba Aquava. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Great to see you in the family, bright and early at the top to greet us all. She says, Hetep family. Hetep, which is the ancient Kemetic or pre-Egypt term for peace. Hetep is a welcome, a greeting. And so it's a pleasure. And Queen Mother, your book will, be going out in the first batch, since you are such a wonderful, wonderful supporter. It's an honor and a pleasure. And I probably will send you an extra copy or two. I got to see how many pre-sale units will be shipping out of my first shipment. And to all of you out here today, we welcome you to the program. Let me describe what today's program is about. As I said, it's going to be a little bit different than what you're used to hearing on LIV Radio. Today is entitled The Metaphysics of Faith. And I like this title. I hope you appreciate it as well. The Metaphysics of Faith. we explore, today on LIB Radio, we explore that part of human philosophical ideology that goes beyond what is merely tangible. We are among a small set of creatures on the planet that includes cetaceans that are capable of reasoning complex idea formation and creating complex societies. However, unlike other reasoning species, humans have crude and destructive patterns of aberrant and destructive behavior that are not necessary for basic survival. We must ponder this malevolent behavior, this bad behavior, in the context of the ultimate survival of our species and the fragile nature within which we must continue to live. Will humanity survive its worst tendencies? Can we get to that place that Nelson Mandela spoke of? And he made this statement. Let me just find out where this quote is, because I pushed it up into the promotion for today's show, and I don't necessarily have that handy until I click on and have that handy. And what I'll do is, while we're looking at that, let me just share that with you, our listening audience, so that you can read it along with me. Let's share that screen. And again, bear with me. It's a little wild today. Not wild, it's just a little okay, here we go. And this is the promotion I used for today's program, the Metaphysics of Faith, Imani. And I had this quote from the Honorable Nelson Mandela. No one is born hating another person because of the color of his skin or his background or his religion. People must learn to hate. And if they can learn to hate, they can be taught to love. For love comes more naturally to the human heart than its opposite. Nelson Mandela. And I profoundly love and appreciate the spirit that Nelson Mandela shared consistently, while at the same time, this is an image coming from Eastern Congo today. This is unfortunately the legacy, the continuing legacy of the division of the African continent at the 1885 Berlin Conference, where 5 European powers observed by 2 others, 5 powers, Britain, France, Belgium, Germany, and Italy, divided up the African continent. Portugal was in there too, colonizing. The Dutch, the Boers, Belgium was in there. So I think it was 7 countries plus 2 observers. The 2 observers were the Russians, and this was the Russian Empire at that time, and the Americans, as they were just beginning to consider empire. So again, 7 nations divided up the continent that today hosts the most nations. But the problem is that at the Berlin Conference, they decisively divided up the most powerful groups into different camps and different languages, so as to be able to split them up and use them, pit them against each other. So the fact of the matter is, Belgium, which was given to King Leopold, or not Belgium, what is today the Democratic Republic of the Congo, was given to King Leopold, the despot of Belgium. And it should have never, ever been one country. And the problems still linger. And so the problems in the eastern DRC is because they broke up, they split up the powerful Tutsi, Kenya, Rwanda people. They speak the same language on both sides of the border. They are the Kenya, Rwanda people. That's the language, Kenya, Rwanda. They mostly speak Swahili, but that is a language that was not their natural language, but became a trade language, widely spread. And so what we're seeing right now is Rwanda naturally expanding into the people who they traditionally were. The modern day nation of Rwanda is too small to hold its population. That was a major component of the 1994 genocide. It's complex. As we understand these things in a larger context, we can then begin to craft and create strategies for eliminating the violence. So that image is formed today. And then I also put up this image of my book, Moving Beyond Racism, New Strategies for a New Millennium. Also for the images today, there are the cetaceans. These are bottlenose dolphins, bottlenose porpoises, I believe these are. There's a difference between dolphins and porpoises. The bottlenose porpoises are undeniably cetaceans, higher reasoning. They even have names. They speak in complex languages in the ocean. Yes, they do. And ultimately, what's this all about? This is about the children of the world. We cannot, we will not, we must not, we cannot hand over a world perpetuating this ultra violence to more generations, because the weapons of war are becoming ever more sophisticated, and more strategic tactical nuclear weapons are being in the hands of often bad players, real bad players. We cannot continue this, people. We're going to do better. And so hence today's program, we are talking about the metaphysics of faith. Imani, the metaphysics of faith. So let's go into today's conversation, if you don't mind. I pulled up and created some notes for the broadcast today. Today really is about a conversation, the metaphysics of faith. First of all, let's get clear about what is metaphysics. And let me see, did I get this? Well, I'll deal with that a little bit later. It's been a really busy morning, and I think I sent out an invitation. I don't know if I finished it, though. I don't recall finishing this invitation that I send out to invite you, our listening audience, to invite those people who have signed up for my email list, to invite you to join with your brother. I didn't finish it, but let me finish it. I'm talking about the new book is out. And I'm very proud of the 3 books, these 3 reference books I put out since the beginning of February. 3 new books for 2025. And so those of you on the mailing list, you are going to get that flyer I sent out. And also, and this is very important, the new book, The Stem Cell Revolution. This is an incredible breakthrough, people. And I'm inviting those of you who have a desire, who have the willpower, to join the upcoming 8-week stem cell rejuvenation class. Based upon the book, you will get a copy of the book with your class enrollment. In 8 weeks, you will watch your body transform. All you have to do is follow the instructions. If you don't follow the instructions, then I can't guarantee. I don't use the word guarantee because a lot of people, I can instruct them wonderfully and they just won't do it. I've had people pay for the classes and then just not do it. Like this used to happen with our 21-day detox class. It was a wonderful class. And people would sign up. And then 4, 5, 7 days into the 21-day fast, I would be asking people, well, tell me about your progress. And they would have to admit, I'm not doing anything. I'm waiting. I'm delaying. I'm delaying till this, delaying till that. Meanwhile, the other people who do not have that attitude are reporting, I feel fantastic. So you can lead a horse to water. You can lead the donkey to water, but you can't make them drink. The donkey got to be thirsty and aware that quenching the thirst requires drinking the water. So if you do join this 8-week, that's not that long, that's just 2 full lunar cycles. If you do join this 56-day stem cell rejuvenation program, you can reasonably expect you're going to start talking about the transformation probably on the 4th to 5th day. You heard me talk about this pinched nerve in my back that was excruciating pain. And on the 5th day, I said, hey, man, that sure was quick. So I could get back into my regular motion routines and exercise routines, which are pretty intense. So enough said. We'll talk about that maybe a little bit later. You've heard me talk about it all week. The class begins February 1st. If you miss a few days of it, if you miss up to a week of it, you'll get what it's about. But if you do the entire 8 weeks, if you do it like I instructed, if you have diabetes, your diabetes is expected to end after the 4th week. If you have hypertension, high blood pressure, your hypertension, high blood pressure is expected to normalize by about the 5th to 7th day. If you are overweight, one person on this last class took off over 20 pounds. He took off 20 pounds in the 8 weeks. He said he hadn't been under 200 pounds for 20 years, something like that. It was about 20 years. And he took it off, got down and feels great now, got rid of his arthritis in his wrists and his leg. That's what I do, and I'm so proud to have this book. This book, The Stem Cell Revolution, is absolutely, undeniably a model for natural and holistic proliferation. What an honor it is to serve such a good people. I see good people in the house. 4 Africa 1 has just joined us from United Kemet. Hetep, Brother Kiti, and global LIB family. Hetep to you. Hetep to Queen Mother Kashiba. Aquaba. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Let's go forward. Here we go. Metaphysics of faith. The metaphysics of faith. Metaphysics is a branch of philosophy that studies the fundamental nature of reality, including concepts like existence, objects, and their properties. It explores questions about what is beyond physical observation and the essence of being itself. The essence of being. That is metaphysics. Merriam-Webster Dictionary defines metaphysics. The meaning of metaphysics is a division of philosophy that is concerned with the fundamental nature of reality and being that includes ontology, cosmology, and often epistemology. The American Heritage Dictionary of the English language defines metaphysics as 1, the branch of philosophy that examines the nature of reality, including the relationship between mind and matter, substance and attribute, fact and value. Definition number 2, the theoretical or first principles of a particular discipline. That's metaphysics. The metaphysics of law is the example they give. And then the third definition from the American Heritage Dictionary of the English Language, 5th edition, the third definition of metaphysics, a priori speculation upon questions that are unanswerable to science or scientific observation, analysis, or experiment. That describes metaphysics. That describes faith. Unanswerable to scientific observation, analysis, or experiment. But you and I, who are, of course, of deeply spiritual people, we understand that faith is an intangibility that's absolutely necessary for the mental, spiritual health, societal health, social health of individuals. If you do not have faith, then quite likely you will accept crude, malevolent, bad behavior of humans toward other humans or toward even our own family, toward the earth, toward other species that share this beautiful water-covered pearl of a planet. You will show bad behavior. You gotta have faith. Imani. That's why in the Nguzo Saba, the 7 principles of Kwanzaa, Imani is one of the key critical principles that we commemorate during the Kwanzaa ceremonies and Kwanzaa week. But many of us have vowed to keep up these 7 principles of Kwanzaa all year long. Dedicate one day a week to focus on Imani, on faith. In the context of philosophy, particularly in metaphysics, faith can be understood as a belief or trust in certain principles or truths that may not be empirically verifiable or rationally justified. This exploration often intersects with the discussions about the fundamental nature of reality, existence, and the properties of objects. Faith. Let's talk a little bit more about faith. Existence and ontology. We're going to define ontology here in just a second for those of you like myself who are unfamiliar with the use of that term. Number 1, faith. Existence and ontology. Faith can play a role in ontological discussions where philosophers examine what it means for something to exist. For instance, some metaphysical frameworks posit that certain entities like abstract objects, universals, or even God exist beyond empirical observation. Faith in these entities may not be grounded in a sensory experience, but rather in a belief in their necessity or coherence within a broader metaphysical system. And I would say also this non-sensory experience that known as creation, creator, creatress, mother goddess, Father God, that this is coherent within a broader social setting. That's one of the premier premises of my book, Moving Beyond Racism. We ask the question, well, what's beyond racism? Culture. Culture is that answer to that great question, how do we resolve these hierarchical structures such as racism, colorism, physiological conditions, wealth, not spirituality, but religion, education, these caste-based hierarchies. How do we overcome them? Culture. Culture is a powerful word that answers so many questions based upon metaphysics. The American Heritage Dictionary of the English Language defines the word ontology as, point one, the branch of metaphysics that deals with the nature of being. Ontology, that department of science of metaphysics which investigates and explains the nature and essential properties and relations of all beings as such, or the principles and causes of being. Ontology. Ontology sounds like some deep meditations. Let's call it meditations. And that makes good sense to me. American Dictionary defines ontology as a systematic arrangement of all of the important categories of objects or concepts which exist in some field of discourse. Now, in this case, ontology is studying that which is tangible, showing the relations between them. When complete, an ontology is a categorization of all of the concepts in some field of knowledge, including the objects and all of the properties, relations, and functions needed to define the objects and specify their actions. A simplified ontology may contain only a hierarchical classification, a taxonomy, showing the type of subsumption relations between concepts in the field of discourse. An ontology may be visualized as an abstract graph with nodes and labeled arcs representing the objects and relations. So that is the first definition of faith, existence, and ontology. Let's go forward. I do see more of you, our listening audience, joining in. I see Dwayne in the house. He says, unfortunately, our faith in Jesus is our downfall. He writes, but what is the culture of Black Americans, not Africans, but Africans born and bred in America? That's a very good question. And in the book, Moving Beyond Racism, with this chapter called What is Culture, then I start to use comparative culture. Now, here, you can answer this question, Dwayne. That's a very good question. Culture is, first of all, let's define what is culture, because you asked what is the culture of this particular group, Afri-Amers, I refer to them. You say Black or Africans born and bred in America. I refer to them in most of my books as Afri-Amers. So culture is, number one, language. Actually, yeah, culture is language. Number two, spiritual expression, or you could use the word here, religion. Two different concepts, but in the concept of what is culture, you can use the word religion. Number three, culture is a set of traditions that you naturally follow. Number four, culture is historical perspective. Number five, culture is a set of morals and values. And number five, that was number five. Number six, culture is your logic and reasoning patterns. So those are the six axioms: language, religion, traditions, historical perspective, morality, and logic. So when comparing Africans across the continent and recognizing there have been documented at least 1,200 different ethnic groups on the African continent, 1,200. So there is a commonality among them all, while there is quite a bit of distinction among 1,200 different groups. But what is the language of Afri-Amers? English. That makes them Western culture. That includes names. Your name, Dwayne, as far as I understand, Dwayne is not an indigenous African name. Correct me if I'm wrong. I, at birth, was given a Scottish man's name by my parents, And I'm not a Scottish man. I do not know anything about Scottish culture. But I was given the name, many of us given names of people who were literally the enslavers, the cruelest ones, who fought in the Civil War to preserve our enslavement. So, what is the culture of African Americans? Religion, you said it. You said, unfortunately, our faith in Jesus is our downfall. Now we have to ask the question, Dwayne, this is a tough question. Which Jesus are we talking about? Are we talking about Yeshua? Are we talking about Jesus? Are we talking about Jesus? Are we talking about the teacher of righteousness described in the Dead Sea Scrolls that existed 70 years before this not even historic Jesus comes into definition? Because the concept of this earthly human called Jesus didn't even come into being until 300 years after he supposedly was born. With the Council of Nicaea, you know about all that. So I think you're on to something here. I just tried to do the best I can to give it clarity. Most people don't know about the teacher of righteousness listed in the Dead Sea Scrolls. And what else was there that we were not told about? Because the Dead Sea Scrolls and this teacher of righteousness appears 70 years before. And then if you're talking about the origins of all of this Christ and Christ, well, we have the origins of Christ thousands of years before the Common Era. Christ, K-R-S-T, Christ. In ancient Kemet, the anointed one. And isn't that the same root of the word Krishna? Yeah, it's true. So I like your point, but here's another point we have to consider, that much of what we have absorbed of reformed, still reforming Christianity, I'm talking about the origins of it, begins in the Nile Valley with the the Egyptian Orthodox Christian Church. And by this time, the Nile Valley Delta and that nation that we knew as Cush, Nubia, Kemet, then became Egypt after the Greeks conquered in 600 BC by Alexander the Macedonian. They changed the name to Egyptos. Then the Romans come along and they redefine it all. But by the time it keeps changing hands, the original Egyptian Coptic church then gives birth to the oldest continuous Orthodox church, and that's the Ethiopian Orthodox Church, but it also branches off and goes east into the Slavic areas, which then go up into Russia and Eastern Europe. Meanwhile, another branch goes to Italy, and the Romans use it to conquer nearly all of Europe, including conquering lands and even creating cities like Londinium, which becomes London. And then by the time it runs into these Visigoths and these remnants of the Mongols in Germany, then it gets reformed. It cannot stand up to the Visigoths. The Visigoths actually destroyed the Roman Empire. And then comes the Reformation of Christianity from Martin Luther in Germany. This is a real complex story. This is why this is philosophy. This is why this is metaphysics. Great question. Great comments, Dwayne. I really appreciate you being in the house today. Queen Mother Kashiba, those things that are not capable of being seen according to the Christian faith, such as Jesus, the Son of God, and the stories in the Bible, yes, those require a leap of faith. Now, a leap of faith is not necessarily a bad thing. I take a leap of faith when I do these programs like the detoxification classes, the stem cell classes. It's a leap of faith based upon my understanding of what is in that terrain, what's on the other side of this hypothesis. And if I come to understand that the other side of this hypothesis is health, wellness, longevity, vital energy, and other things, I take a leap of faith into there. But at the same time, because I do science, I like to measure, engage, and gather data and constantly analyze that data to see which part of that leap of faith can be adjusted to make the outcome even better. So I like the idea of faith. I like the idea of metaphysics. At the same time, personally, I have been grounded my entire life, and I inherited from my parents at birth. I have been grounded in scientific discipline. Merging the two, I believe, gives us the strongest position to not only leap of faith, but sustain our progress, become the masters of our fate, the captains of our soul's journey. We're talking about defining these branches of metaphysics and faith. Number one on the list was existence and ontology. We gave you a definition of ontology. The number 2 on the list is epistemology. Epistemology is the study of knowledge and belief, is crucial when discussing faith. Philosophers like William James have argued that faith can be a legitimate basis for belief, especially in cases where evidence is inconclusive. This raises questions about the nature of justification. Can faith itself serve as a form of knowledge, or is it inherently distinct from rational belief? I'm going to repeat that question. And maybe you, our listening audience, will help to answer this question. The question is about the nature of justification. Can faith itself serve as a form of knowledge, or is it inherently distinct from rational belief? Dwayne, I think you're answering the question before the question's even asked. He said, unfortunately, our faith, and I presume you're claiming it, in Jesus is our downfall. I disagree with that. I'll tell you why I disagree in just a second. He said, but what is the culture of Black Americans, not Africans, but Africans born and bred in America? I think I was starting to answer that. We talked about Blacks celebrate 4th of July. Blacks celebrate Christmas on not the Ethiopian Orthodox celebration of Christmas, which is several weeks later. Blacks celebrate Christmas according to a solar pattern. And that Christmas that Blacks in America celebrate is actually based upon a misinterpretation of the Nile Valley winter solstice celebration, the rebirth of the sun, S-U-N. After the 5 days of the ancient ritual of the festival of Ma'at, the 25th day of December is considered to be the birth of the S-O-N, the sun, that there's really no hard evidence. There's really no hard evidence to validate the Jesus story. People validate it with their faith. And the question on the table is faith itself evidence? For some people, yes. Are those people mentally the strongest of our society? I say no. Just look at the current administration. Look at the long-term administration of the American government. The founding fathers of America were Christians. They believed in Jesus. They believed in the Reformation. They believed in the Bible, all of that, while they engaged in the worst kind of cruelty, genocide against human beings. The indigenous people of this land were humans, probably more humane humans than exist today. The Africans that were enslaved, they were humans. At one point, they even enslaved other white people, but they freed them. They let them work off their debt. Meanwhile, Africans were tortured for many generations. Some 13.5 million enslaved Africans in the United States. So these people who were of this great faith of Christianity, what was the name of the first boat that brought the enslaved over? They said it was the great ship Jesus. So I think that's kind of self-evidence that faith itself is not evidence of anything, because faith is so malleable. Faith shapeshifts according to what is the desired outcome. What is the culture of Black Americans? European. And it's not necessarily Europeans, because the Europeans have different language, they have different values, but the faith of, if you're talking about the culture of African Americans, it is a modified, mutated British culture. And don't dwell, please, Dwayne, do not dwell on that question. Get beyond it. I want you to look at the title of the book, Moving Beyond Racism. New Strategies for a New Millennium. Don't get hung up there, brother. Trust me, you're going to miss it. If you get hung up there, I know, I kind of feel what you're doing right now. People get hung up on an idea, they get stuck on that idea, and they stop hearing what's being said. Today, we are in class, and it's not good when a student forms a hard opinion early in the class and won't listen to anything else the professor is sharing. Here we go. Kashiba, Queen Mother, those things that are not capable of being seen according to the Christian faith, such as Jesus, the Son of God, and the stories in the Bible. But Dwayne said, but that's European culture. That's what I'm saying. It's not African culture. You got it. So he didn't get hung up. And Google says, Hatep family, welcome to the conversation. We're getting deep. And see, we're in this area of metaphysics where conflict emerges. And I'm not going to blame any individual. It is the culture of this society that teaches us anything other than the Jesus story, the Abraham story, the Jewish story, the Islamic story. Anything other than that is evil, is wrong, is conflict generated. You and I could have the same conversation and be surrounded by not only the MAGA people, MAGA dogs, as Peter Tosh called them, but surrounded also by the liberal Democrats. And they will be very angry at you and I questioning that thing that they grew up in and believe is so powerful that even talking outside of that acceptance, they want to step away from you because they expect God to throw a lightning bolt out of a cloud and strike you dead right there on the scene. That's how buck wild the system for control evolved. We don't have to hold on to that, but we do need to ground ourselves in something that makes sure that we have a values system, moral system that allows us to be socially adaptable to the point of creating sustainable societies. We talked about epistemology, excuse me, I don't know where my brain and my eyes were. The study of knowledge and belief is crucial when discussing faith. Next point, 3, properties and relations. In metaphysics, the properties of objects and their relations to one another are central concerns. Faith may influence how one interprets these properties, especially in the context of moral or existential claims. For example, a belief in the inherent goodness of certain properties, like love or justice, may stem from a faith-based worldview that prioritizes these values as fundamental to reality. That is one of the hallmarks of the distinctions of culture. And I started an idea I didn't finish a little bit earlier. The idea that Western Christianity fits us? No. I spent a little over a week in Ethiopia in May 2017, was a guest of the Pan-African Technical Association in cooperation with Ethiopia Airlines and the Ministry of Culture and Tourism. We were called to Ethiopia to take a wonderful, wonderful tour of the country and come back and tell the rest of the world what we had witnessed. And I have, since May 2017, been telling every African American, if you are a Christian or if you're a non-Christian, you need to go to Ethiopia and spend some time there and witness what it is to be in a truly Christian society. Ethiopia is as close to a truly Christian society as we have an example of. The other Orthodox countries, many of them, not all of them, but many of them still engage in the imperialist conqueror warmongering. You don't see Greece doing much of that nowadays, but traditionally Greece was quite warmongering. After they adopted the Eastern Orthodox religion, they kind of settled down, even though Greece has been the target. I mean, in World War II, Greece was fought over. They had to fight back to defend themselves. They were not imperialists. The Italians were imperialists. The Russians were imperialists. The Germans were imperialists. The Americans and the British were imperialists. But the Greek people, in their Orthodox spirituality, had like chilled out. Orthodox Christianity, I contend, not always, but Orthodox Christianity tends to mellow out the imperialist tendencies and aggressive tendencies of nations. Not all the time, but in Ethiopia, it's probably the most advanced. So African Americans and Dwayne, if you get a chance, do spend some time in Ethiopia. You may not be able to physically get there. Just study the culture, study the people. Listen to that speech that His Imperial Majesty Haile Selassie I gave to the League of Nations, which became the basis of the song by Bob Marley and the Wailers called War. Until the philosophy that holds one race superior and another inferior. And I actually have it, and I put it in the beginning of the new book, Disaster Preparedness for World Wars 5 and 6. This is what I opened the book with, the off-title page. Until the philosophy, which holds one race superior and another inferior, is finally and permanently discredited and abandoned, everywhere is war. And until there are no longer first-class and second-class citizens of any nation, until the color of a man's skin is of no more significance than the color of his eyes, and until the basic human rights are equally guaranteed to all without regard to race, there is war. And until that day, the dream of lasting peace, world citizenship, the rule of international morality will remain but a fleeting illusion to be pursued but never attained. Now, everywhere is war. By His Imperial Majesty Haile Selassie I, selected speeches popularized by Bob Marley in the song War. And I have this photograph. I don't know whether you can see it with the chroma key on, of Selassie holding a child. I love the book. I love this book. And this book is data rich. I'm talking about, and I finally finished the third book until I took a look at them all and I said, just flipping through the pages randomly, it's just data rich. Gives you chronologies and dates, and we redefine World Wars One. And I began this analysis at the beginning of the 20th century. I had to put a starting point on it because this history of war just goes back 1,000 years. So I said this book begins at 1901. Actually begins a little bit before that with the Russo-Japan War. But we took World War One, the clash of empires. World War II, the rise of the fascist empire attempt to take over the traditional European empires. And they did break up the British, French, and Dutch empires. And then at the end of World War II, the United States comes in and scoops up the remnants of these empires. And now for a half a century, the United States is a global empirical power. That's done now. That's done. So that leads us to what took out the world, the U.S. hegemonical empire. That was World War III, the Cold War between the Western capitalists and the Eastern Orthodox / socialists. And that took out actually the Eastern Orthodox socialists, the Soviet Union, and the Warsaw Pact. Then comes World War IV, the global war against Islam. It's been going on right in front of your face. I have not heard anyone else define this global conflict against Islam by the other Abrahamic religions. I've heard no one else talk about that as World War IV. This book is entitled Disaster Preparedness for World Wars V and VI, both of which have become initiated. You want to read this book if you want to understand what I am talking about. I think you will agree. Baba Jr.'s got his copy and he says, yeah, I'm reading the book and you're right. These definitions of these global conflicts gives us great understanding to see history in real time. Now we're witnessing World War V, the global war of the corporations and the uber rich against the rest of us. And World War VI, the alignment of the Western powers for a last stand against the biggest opposition to they've been up against since the Soviet Union, and that is BRICS Plus. And that one, the battle lines are getting harder, and the initial battles are already engaging. Propaganda war, economic war, cyber warfare. Disaster preparedness. The chapter, if you bought that book only for the chapter entitled, let me give you the exact title of the chapter so you'll know to look out for it. If you bought this book only for the chapter called Game Theory for Master's Level, this book would be, it's one of the most powerful books of the generation. I don't know of anyone that gave us a better definition of game theory. And in the chapters, the subchapters put me in the game, coach. We need a win. And then 30 keys to understanding game theory. Those 30 keys may be the most comprehensive list of understanding game theory ever published. That's where I'm at this point. Because I have such a great level of understanding of the powers of these different themes that we research, I say, well, because I have a different understanding, let me take it to where I'm learning myself. And whereas when I first started talking about game theory, there were basically the 4 principles of game theory. Now in this book, there's 30. Nobody else has published 30 principles of game theory. The biggest list I found was 15. And then I searched and searched and searched and searched different angles of looking for this and came up with 30 principles of game theory. We can now win because the other side doesn't have such a complex understanding. We can now win. Should we choose to be winners? That's why today's program, we're talking about the fundamentals of metaphysics and faith. Imani. Number 4, again, the previous one. Number 3, properties and relations. Number 4, existentialism and faith. Existentialists, philosophers, emphasize the subjective experience of faith as a response to the absurdity of existence. I'm going to repeat that. It's a little complicated. Existentialist philosophers emphasize the subjective experience of faith, subjective, not objective, as a response to the absurdity of existence. In this view, faith becomes a personal commitment to meaning and purpose in a world that may seem indifferent or chaotic. This perspective highlights the tension between rational inquiry and the leap of faith that individuals must take to find significance in their lives. So that brings us back to that quote by Nelson Mandela that I shared a little bit earlier, that I used in the promotion. Nelson Mandela said this, and again, this absurdity, you're talking about this absurdity of faith and purpose and commitment to truth and justice. What did one call it? This altruism. Nelson Mandela said, no one is born hating another person because of the color of his skin or his background or his religion. People must learn to hate. And if they can learn to hate, they can be taught to love, for love comes more naturally to the human heart than its opposite. From Nelson Mandela. In a world where this ruthlessness of the clash of civilizations and the conflict, I'm thinking about that quote from Michael Dedbin in his book. What was the title of his book? Something Lagoon, where he says, unless we hate what we are not, we cannot learn to love what we are. And that was just a brief excerpt of the larger quote. I have that in my book. Which book is that in? I think it's in Conspiracies and High Crimes that talks about this conflict. It might be in Moving Beyond Racism. And I've got so many books out now. I'm trying to remember which one it's in. Unless we hate what we are not, we cannot learn to love what we are. And this basically fits the idea that enemies are necessary for a people to consolidate their identity. Having a common enemy. The Republicans and the Democrats and the Republicans go at each other every day, all day long. You'd swear they're ready to grab the gats until China comes to mind or Russia comes to mind. Then they're united. And until Islam comes to mind, until something outside of them like African people comes to mind, then the Democrats and the Republicans are all united. We need to kill to preserve ourselves. Unless we hate what we are not, we cannot learn to love who we are. And, I wish I knew I could remember right now which book that's in, because I would grab it and turn to that page and read you that quote. It's a very, very powerful quote. It's a much larger quote, but just keep reading my books. You'll come across it. That was number 4, existentialism and faith. Again, the last part, this perspective highlights the tension between rational inquiry and the leap of faith that individuals must take to find significance in their lives. You do want to find significance in your life in a world of cruelty and ugliness and greed and obsession, and where the billionaire class keeps taking more and more and more and more. We still need to have our foundation of Imani, faith. That's why it's one of the 7 principles of Kwanzaa. In summary, faith in the philosophical context of metaphysics involves a complex interplay between belief, existence, and the properties of reality. It raises important questions about the nature of knowledge, the justification of beliefs, and the search for meaning in a potentially indifferent universe. Wow, that was pretty good. There's more. I do see another comment, and great to see so many of you tuned in today and engaging. Queen Mother Kashiba wrote, Kitty, I have a video to send you regarding the Ethiopian church that disagrees somewhat with what you have stated. There was an African spiritual system that existed before it existed. Oh yes, you're absolutely right. Again, the Ethiopian Orthodox was based upon the Egyptian Orthodox, which was based upon the long existence of Kemetic spiritual hierarchical system. And when we talk about spiritual hierarchical system, that gets into religion. Kemet, the spirituality of the people, became the politics. They naturally merged together. I am myself ordained minister in the Sacred Order of the Sons of Ra ministry, which to a very great degree takes its foundation upon the existence of an order before that. So I completely agree. Ethiopian Orthodox, because to some extent the Ethiopian Orthodox Church still grinds on some of these mythologies that came out of the Greek conquest of the Nile Valley 600 years before Christ, before the Common Era, I guess they would say BC. And when the Greeks came in, at first they saw the Kemetian way as their preferred pathway, which is why the Greeks made it a point to create the Ptolemaic dynasty in imitation of what was already there. Cleopatra is I think she's the last of this Ptolemaic dynasty. And so there is, as Vincent Harding says in his book, there is a river, and it flows from generation to generation, from culture to culture, from eon to eon. There is a river. I do completely agree. African spiritual system that existed before it existed, I completely, wholeheartedly agree. If I said anything contrary to that, then you did correct me. And I stand corrected. Stand taller corrected. She said, I will not comment on it until you have watched this video. And yeah, I'll get a chance to watch this video. I got a little bit of a respite. This week, people would be sending me research and stuff, and I just like pushing all of it to the side, because writing and completing 1, 2, 3 books in a 2-month period was really, really challenging. And the writer's course has just begun. And believe it or not, Queen Mother, I got 3 books pulled up simultaneously right now. The first book, I've really committed to it, but it's kind of complex. This is another book on Pan-African sustainable development. And my last one that came out on this subject was called Forged Through Fire. That was in late 2023. Now, as of 2025, I have another one coming out. This one's being highly welcomed on the mother continent, so I'm really kind of writing it for our continental family. And we'll talk off the air about what that's fitting into a strategic plan. I'm excited about that. I love to write. You can tell I love to write. I'm writing reference books now. And so especially after the stem cell revolution book, I'm going to just probably move more toward reference books because I'm teaching myself. I'm teaching myself to become a college professor. I am. That's why I'm doing these classes. I wish more of you had taken the stem cell class I just taught. You'll probably say what Kwame Reggie wrote. He talked about the way I taught the class, how informative it was, and I agree. She said, from my research, Dwayne said Ethiopia came before Kemet. No, I'm not even going to entertain that. No, that's way out of order. Kashiba writes, Queen Mother, for example, the Syrian faith was patrilineal and changed the matrilineal system of the Ethiopians. Yeah. Yeah. Again, recognizing now Ethiopia was never conquered, but Egypt was conquered. And the Ethiopian Orthodox follows the model of the Egyptian Orthodox when some of the patriarchal leaders of Ethiopia traveled to Egypt to learn the Egyptian Orthodox Coptic Church and bring that back to Ethiopia. And Egypt was undeniably conquered multiple times by the Western Asian groups, which include the Assyrians. So yes, that makes logical sense. The Assyrians' conquest and impact and influence over the Nile Valley, there were multiple incursions of Assyrians, the Greeks, the Romans, Persians, multiple incursions, and the Africans fought back. I know Tutmos III is revered for his fighting back, chasing them out of the Nile Delta, and even going up insofar as conquering the Fertile Crescent, which is modern day Israel and Assyria and other parts. So yes, Malcolm X said, of all of our studies, history is most qualified to reward our efforts. So I don't have handy a timeline, but the idea that Ethiopia came before Kemet, no. Ethiopia, the term Ethiopia was a Greek term. There are biblical references to Abyssinia, which indicates a lineage there. Abyssinia comes before Ethiopia and even lasts well after Ethiopia. That land was referred to as Abyssinia by the Italians as they attempted to conquer it. But Abyssinia is itself following Aksum. And Aksum has got me really excited. If you want to study this hierarchy, this chronology, don't overlook Aksum. Aksum is very, very important. Kashiba said, Kemet is the daughter of Ethiopia, but the term Ethiopia is not used yet until well after Kemet. Ethiops is a Greek terminology meaning, I think, blackface or burnt face. and Egyptos, the same thing. So the timeline chronology here is not, I mean, if we have another name for Ethiopia, because Ethiopia, oh, now I don't want to go back here because now we're talking about Solomon and Sheba. And when you go to Ethiopia, I went there and we went to the temple of what was called the heart of Sheba. This was the capital of the kingdom that we know as Sheba. Sheba is in the biblical story an individual, a queen of Sheba. It's not an individual. They refer to the queen of Sheba, Queen Makeda. This is a separate program. Maybe I'll do that. Maybe I won't. Because there's other important information. Because we can argue and argue and argue about history or what it means, or we can become instruments of historical change. Malcolm X said, of all of our studies, history is most qualified to reward our research. John Henry Clark said, history is a roadmap that lets a people know where they are on timeline, where they have been, but most importantly, where they can expected to be. So yes, history is awesome. I love history, but I am a scientific futurist. Ethiopia are the ancient Kushites. Now that's what I'm talking about. We have Kush, Nubia, Sheba, Aksum, Ethiopia, Abyssinia, Somalia, all of these different lineages. Again, let's remember, before the Berlin Conference, the African continent, we could probably look at and list 1,200 different ethnic groups, tribes, nations. We have long lineage going back to Zimbabwe. That's much further south. If we're talking about the Blue Nile and the White Nile, we have the Nilotic peoples. The Nilotic peoples did not only go geographically north, but they also went up the Nile, or they came from up the Nile, but they also migrated up the Nile when the conflicts of the invaders from Western Asia would put pressure on the Delta and the lower Nile. Geographically up, the globe's been flipped upside down because the Europeans won themselves at the top. But when the conflicts came in the lower Nile, the people would leave the conflict areas and become refugees, and they would go into the origins of their people, which included the Nilotic migrations. When I was in Uganda, my partner at the time, she was a fellow journalist, and my partner at the time, we were engaged briefly. That's a whole nother conversation I'm not going to get into. But she was from one of the Nilotic peoples that had migrated up the Blue Nile, up the White Nile, which is geographically south. And when they would flee Egypt through Sudan. And again, Egypt and Sudan are creations of the Europeans, Berlin Conference. They are the same people, Nilotic people. Please understand what I'm saying. And they were broken up into different nations for control purposes. But the people would migrate up the river during conflict times and go to their ancient homelands, which became as far today geographically south. We can see Nilotic peoples made it into Kenya, made it into Uganda and Kenya and Tanzania. Some might even say they made it even further than that. We could look at the Tutsi migration. And the Tutsi migration could very well tie into the Nilotic migrations. So I got a little off the topic. I'm going to get back on topic. Metaphysics. Let's go to Wikipedia. This branch of philosophy examines the most general features of reality, including existence, objects, and their properties. In this context, faith can be seen as a belief in metaphysical reality, and that is not directly observable or provable through empirical means. For example, some may have faith in the existence of a divine being or a spiritual realm that is beyond the physical world. Metaphysicians use various methods to conduct their inquiry. Metaphysicians use various methods to conduct their inquiry. Traditionally, they rely on rational intuitions and abstract reasoning, but have recently included empirical approaches associated with scientific theories. Due to the abstract nature of its topic, metaphysics has received criticisms questioning the reliability of its methods and the meaningfulness of its theories. Metaphysics is relevant to many fields of inquiry that often implicitly rely on metaphysical concepts and assumptions. And Dwayne, you're asking me a question that is off topic, and I'm going to stop talking off topic. So I'm going back on topic. If anybody wants to ask me a question on topic, let's be clear. Today, the topic of the program is the metaphysics of faith. Imani, I'm going to repeat. I'm going to only talk on the topic. I pulled up some really good research. We're not that far from finishing it. If everybody wants to talk about everything that's off topic, that's not allowed. That's distracting. And already we've done too much of that. I did say I'll do another show about the etiology of the Nile Valley. I may even call in Robin Walker to talk from his book, When We Ruled. I have his book. Where is that book? I think it's right here, because I was pulling out When We Ruled by Robin Walker. He would be the best guest. He may be one of our greatest living historians. Robin Walker, the book When We Ruled, highly, highly recommend it. I'll send a note. Call Robin Walker. Call Robin Walker. And we'll do the chronology. He will blow your mind. This brother is absolutely brilliant. Going forward, we're on topic. Epistemology. Let me reread that last part of that. Due to the abstract nature of its topic, metaphysics has received criticisms questioning the reliability of its methods and the meaningfulness of its theories. Metaphysics is relevant to many fields of inquiry that often implicitly rely on metaphysical concepts and assumptions. So metaphysics applies to topics that use metaphysics to validate themselves. Yeah, that's an African way of thinking. I can go with that. Epistemology is the branch of philosophy that examines the nature, origins, and limits of knowledge, also called theory of knowledge. It explores different types of knowledge, such as propositional knowledge about facts, practical knowledge in the form of skills, and knowledge by acquaintance as a familiarity through experience. Epistemologists study the concepts of belief, truth, and justification to understand the nature of knowledge. To discover how knowledge arises, they investigate sources of justification such as perception. Now, again, this is in the realm of metaphysics, y'all. So with the realm of metaphysics, everything is best regarded as subjective and not objective. In summary, faith in the context of philosophy that studies the fundamental nature of reality can be understood as a belief in metaphysical realities, entities, or properties that are not directly observable or provable through empirical means of logic reasoning. Now, I'm going to take another turn here, and we're going to talk about our cousins on this planet, cetaceans. Cetaceans. Cetaceans, which include whales, dolphins, and porpoises, exhibit remarkable mental and reasoning faculties that suggest high levels of intelligence. Research indicates that they possess complex social structures, often living in pods with intricate social relationships. Dolphins, for instance, demonstrate advanced communication skills, using a variety of vocalizations and even signature whistles that function like names. Wow, that's deep. We continue. Studies have shown that cetaceans can solve problems, exhibit self-awareness, and display behaviors indicative of empathy. The mirror test, which assesses self-recognition, has been passed by some dolphin species, suggesting a level of self-awareness comparable to that of great apes. Additionally, cetaceans engage in cooperative hunting and play, indicating cognitive flexibility and social learning. Their large brains, particularly the neocortex, are associated with higher order thinking. Some species, like the orca, have been observed using tools and developing unique cultural practices within their pods. Overall, cetaceans demonstrate a range of cognitive abilities that challenge traditional views of intelligence, highlighting their complex emotional lives and sophisticated reasoning skills. This growing body of evidence underscores the need for conservation efforts to protect these intelligent marine mammals and their habitats. And did I get through everything? I think I did. Yes. I got through all of those. Now, some of the research I pulled up today did lead me to other pieces of that research. And I want to thank you all for staying with us. We did get a little off topic today, but I think we did a pretty reasonable job of snapping back. I want to go to just a little bit of some of my source material. This first reference comes to us from Wikipedia, talking about reality. And that's really the nature. We're talking about faith, Imani, and metaphysics. And part of that is what is real and what is real. Going to Wikipedia, reality is the sum or aggregate of all that is real. Or using the word to define the word is not so good. Using all that is real or existent within the universe, as opposed to that which is only imaginary, non-existent, or non-actual. The term is also used to refer to the ontological status of things, indicating their existence. In physical terms, Reality is the totality of a system, known and unknown. Philosophical questions about the nature of reality or existence or being are considered under the rubric of ontology. And we gave you that definition of ontology, which is a major branch of metaphysics in the Western philosophical tradition. Ontological questions also feature in diverse branches of philosophy, including the philosophy of science, of religion, of mathematics, and philosophical logic. These include questions about whether only physical objects are real, i.e., physicalism, whether reality is fundamentally immaterial, example given, idealism, whether hypothetical unobservable entities posited by scientific theories exist, whether a god or gods exist, whether numbers and other abstract objects exist, and whether possible worlds exist. Epistemology is concerned with what can be known or inferred as likely, and how, whereby in the modern world emphasis is put on reason, empirical evidence, and science as sources and methods to determine or investigate reality. That's deep. Going further down this study pathway, talking about reality, world views and theories. I'm going to skip this one because it's a little off the subject and I don't want to go off topic. I'm going to skip that. And what I am going to do is go to another one of these source of what we were talking about today. Let's go to Stanford University, to Plato, and talk about what is faith. And here, let me just share for you Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy Archive. Copy. Let me give you the source of this, and copy all. Copy and share this with you in case anybody wants to know where I am reading from. This comes from Stanford Encyclopedia. And bear with me. And we're talking again today. The topic is the metaphysics of faith. So here is the reference I'm talking to you from. Where is it at? And let's pick it up right here. Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy Archive, Fall 2017 edition, Faith. What is faith? The entry focuses on the nature of faith, although issues about the justifiability of faith are also implicated. Faith is a broad term in locutions that express a range of different concepts. At its most general, faith means much the same as trust. This entry is specifically concerned, however, with the notion of religious faith, or rather, and this qualification is important, the kind of faith exemplified in religious faith. Philosophical accounts are almost exclusively about theistic religions, faith in God, and they generally, though not exclusively, deal with faith as understood within the Christian branch of the Abrahamic traditions. But although the theistic religious context settles what kind of faith is of interest, the question arises whether faith of that same general kind also belongs to other non-theistic religious contexts, or the contexts not usually thought of as religious at all. Arguably, it may be apt to speak of the faith of a humanist or even of an atheist using the same general sense of faith as it applies to the theist case. The present discussion focuses on theistic religious faith as a paradigm of the kind of faith that is of interest. Although the question of faith outside this context is taken up in the final section, 11, so this is a rather lengthy document, and I can tell it is rather lengthy. Philosophical reflection on theistic religious faith has produced different accounts or models of its nature. This entry suggests that there are several key components that may feature with varying emphasis in models of faith, in particular the affective, the cognitive, the evaluative, and the practical, or as some may say, the volitional. It suggests also that there is a variety of different principles according to which models of faith may be categorized, including point 1, how the model relates faith as a state to the active components associated with faith. Point 2, whether the model takes the object of faith to be exclusively propositional or not. Number 3, the type of epistemology with which the model is associated, whether it is broadly evidentialist or fideist. And point 4, whether the model is necessarily restricted to theistic religious faith or may extend beyond it. Whew. I'm not going to read too much more of this. This is heavy. What I am going to do, I did put up the link for those of you who want to research along, study along, Stanford Encyclopedia, and they're talking about faith. And I am going to copy and save this to my hard drive. Now, this is a long article. Let me see if I can get to the conclusion. And it's got a lot of references to it. Does it have a conclusion? Faith beyond orthodox theism. Let me just do this. Let me just save this to my hard drive. This is some good stuff. Now, it's not necessarily this kind of stuff that I normally use. And I told you at the beginning of today's show, after spending since the beginning of December only focusing on data and facts and references and chronologies and histories and scientific futurism, I wanted to just take a little bit of a break. And I thank you all for sticking with me. I'm going to just save this to my hard drive. This is on faith from Stanford University Encyclopedia. Real quickly, where am I going to put this? I'll just put this in the general knowledge. Where are we at? Print. Ugh. Yeah, it's been that kind of a week. Up late nights completing the book. And very satisfied with that done. So this is Stanford Encyclopedia on Faith. And so saving that. And let's see if we can get a conclusion paragraph out of this. It may not be that easy. Where we is. Faith and hope. These different chapters they talk about different types of faith. Faith as doxastic venture. I don't know what the word doxastic means. They talk about faith as a sub or non-doxastic venture. Faith and hope. We do know too much about faith and hope. This is from Stanford University, so they're talking about different faith as a virtue, faith beyond orthodox theism. I think I'll wrap it up with this section. Yeah. And I'm not going to read this whole section. It's rather lengthy. Faith beyond orthodox theism. And theism is, of course, religious. Theism is religion as, what's the word? Catechism? That's not the right word. Theology, theism, theology, religious theology, faith beyond orthodox theology. What is the potential scope of faith? On some models, the kind of faith exemplified by theistic faith is found only there. On both the special knowledge and the belief models, faith is intrinsically linked to theological context, indeed to Orthodox Christian theological context, specifiable as one unified set of doctrines conveyed to receptive human minds by the operation of divine grace. Both the doxastic and sub-doxastic venture models, however, allow for the possibility that authentic faith may be variously realized and be directed upon different and multiple incompatible intentional objects. This pluralism is an important feature of accounts of faith in the American pragmatist tradition. John Dewey strongly rejected the notion of faith as a special kind of knowledge, as did William James, whose justification of faith rests on permissibility thesis, under which varied and conflicting faith commitments may equally have a place in the intellectual republic. Both Dewey and James defend models of faith with a view to advancing the idea that authentic religious faith may be found outside what is generally supposed to be theological orthodoxy. There's some of us who are agnostics would agree with that statement. Let me reread that. And if you are hearing this in the context of you are an agnostic, I think you will understand what they're saying. Both Dewey and James defend models of faith with a view to advancing the idea that authentic religious faith may be found outside what is generally supposed to be a theological orthodoxy. Furthermore, they suggest that unorthodox faith may be more authentic than orthodox faith. The faith that is religious, says Dewey, I should describe as the unification of the self through allegiance to inclusive ideal ends, which imagination presents to us and to which the human will responds as worthy of controlling our desires and choices. And James, quote, religion says essentially two things. First, she says that the best things are the more eternal things, the overlapping things, the things in the universe that throw the last stone, so to speak, and say the final word. And the second affirmation of religion is that we are better off now if we believe her first affirmation to be true. Unquote. While some of what Dewey and James say about justifiable faith may appear non-realist, and in fact they both preserve the idea that religious faith aspires to grasp beyond the evidence vital truth about reality. Dewey holds that religious belief grounds hope because it takes something to be true about the real world, which carries one through periods of darkness and despair to such an extent that they lose their usual depressive character. I like that last sentence. Let me read it again with maybe a little bit more clarity. While some of what Dewey and James say about justifiable faith may appear non-realist, In fact, they both preserve the idea that religious faith aspires to grasp beyond the evidence both vital truth about reality. Dewey holds that religious belief grounds hope. Dewey holds that religious belief grounds hope because it takes something to be true about the real world which carries one through periods of darkness and despair to such an extent that they lose their usual depressive character. I like what I read there. It was a little difficult to read, I will say. But I like what the authors of this article wrote. And I'm going to copy, cut, and paste that in today's notes, which I will be referring to in case I include this in one of the several books that I'm writing. And let me just go up and put the source of this together, the article title and the source. I gave it to you a little bit earlier. And this is Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy Archive. And boom, put this reference in. And I think we have come to the end of our research today. Let me go back to the beginning and describe what our intention was today. Today on LIB Radio, we explore that part of human philosophical ideology that goes beyond that which is merely tangible. We are among a small set of creatures on the planet that includes cetaceans that are capable of reasoning, complex idea formation, and creating complex societies. However, unlike other reasoning species, humans have crude and destructive patterns of aberrant and destructive behavior that are not necessarily necessary for basic survival. We must ponder this malevolent behavior in the context of the ultimate survival of our species and the fragile nature within which we must continue to live. Will humanity survive its worst tendencies? Well, according to what we shared today, we have to have faith that we will. Because if we don't have the faith that we will, then observing the observable phenomena that's going on around it, the objective observations, might lead us to depression, might lead us to losing our will to hold on to idealism and to hold on to the belief without evidence that humans will survive this. I like that point. I like that point of exiting this conversation. I did write the book Fade to Black, The Passing of a Great Race, and no small number of people of strong faith said, no, we're going to make it. And I just used the data. I just used the evidence and the data patterns and where they projected to leave using the tenets of scientific futurism to say, Afro-Americans, you're not going to make it. You are not making it now. You're not going to improve on that when the conditions are getting worse at a faster rate than ever. But I did say, and I ground my faith upon this theme that we have been referring to since 2015 called Africa Rising. Africa Rising is a powerful theme. And I am very proud to have excited a whole lot of people about Africa Rising. I even have one book that I have handy, this one written by Vijay Mahajan, Africa Rising. How 900 million African consumers offer more than you think. This book is essentially an economic development book, Africa Rising. But I have lots of books. I have my own book titled Africa Rising, Dawn is Breaking in the East, or Dawn is Breaking over Africa. So there is reason to have great faith, hope, but that has got to be tempered by the tangibles. What work are we doing to reflect this massive transformative purpose? That's why I am upgrading this concept. We've been teaching now for 10 years, Africa Rising. Now it's been upgraded to the African future. Come along on this journey. It's going to be an awesome journey. You're going to hear me talking a lot about the African future. They're talking on the continent now, in multiple countries, about the African future based upon the work that we have done here for 10 years on LIB Radio. They're speaking about it every week on Dominion TV. You heard me on Dominion TV a couple of weeks ago. Yesterday, one of our LIB Radio family, Dr. Chinzara Kahina, she was on Dominion TV because they called me, or actually messaged me, and said, we have this forum tomorrow talking about Pan-African women's development. Can you suggest someone to come on the program? And I sent out notice to 3 people, and my beloved sister, Dr. Chen Zara, she said, was this sent out as a general, or did you direct this to me? I said, I directed that to you, because I could only think of 3 Pan-African women here in this country that I know of. I know a number of them have already repatriated that would step up to speak on this topic. And Dr. Chen, eminently qualified. I have not heard the conversation. I'll play it back as soon as I get the link. I know the program was recorded this morning in Accra, Ghana. And I know it's going to be great. I look forward to hearing from Pan-African women talking about themselves, their role in society, their evolution, future development, and teaching the younger women to fulfill the wholeness, the completeness of Africana womanism. I would have loved to have participated in that dialogue because I've been studying Africana womanism for 2 decades. Yet I understand completely why they wanted to balance the conversation with women's voices and with women scholars. So thank you, Dr. Chinzara Kahina, for stepping forward. You made me look great because you are walking greatness. On that notion, today is a great day. I want to remind you it's going to get even better when you get into this class. Please don't overlook, don't sleep on this, people. Don't waste another 2 months, 4 months, 6 months, another year of your life being sick and tired and aging, cramped up legs and knees, brain fog. You can't remember anything. You can't keep cohesive ideas. Can't stay focused on a topic. Don't go out like this. I was talking to someone yesterday about a dear friend of ours whose mother has Alzheimer's, and beautiful. Her mother's spirit is beautiful, but Alzheimer's unfortunately removes the human from the room. And our friend who's dealing with her mother, she's given her the most wonderful, loving, gentle care, but she also has things she has to take care of in the world. And she has a child who's getting married. So please, everybody out there, don't put this burden of dementia, cognitive disorders, Alzheimer's, amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease, Huntington's, Parkinson's, demyelinating diseases. Don't put this on your family. Don't put failing eyesight and going blind, macular degeneration on your family. Don't put arthritis and joint replacement surgery of your hips, your knees, your elbows, your wrists, your shoulders. Don't put that burden on your family. Commit. Commit early, and commit strong. Commit to the point where you're not only taking care of yourself, but you have become a teacher. This is the new way. This is the future. I have been blessed because I am a scientific futurist to go to the future and bring this back and bring this and give this, put this in front of the people, only to have the people standing around saying, I can't have no chicken. Oh, please. How did you become so reduced to only being an ignorant consumer? Why aren't you a master? Why aren't you a leader, a teacher? Why aren't you a prophet? Why aren't you the absolute vanguard, cutting edge leadership to define a new, sovereign, and sustainable global order? Why are you not the one to stand up to these globalists? Why are not more of us stepping up on point? And Groove, I see you in the house, says fantastic, fascinating topic. I did not hear the start, but I think of faith is belief in unverified facts. Yes, but I hope you heard at the end that faith is an elixir. Once one consumes that elixir of faith, then one is better able to manifest based upon that value system in the world. Go to my Facebook page or go to my chefkiti.com page and get on my mailing list if you're not already. Let's do things. Let's do magnificent things. Let's do fantastic things. Let's transform ourselves so that we can and will transform the future for this and future generations. Thank you to each and every one of you. LIB Radio, LIB TV, and livinginblack.com. Peace and prosperity.